So I've been using the same computer monitor for the last 2-3 years for my YouTube videos, video editing and stuff, but also for color grading for my other freelance jobs as well. And my friend Tujin, my dear friend Tujin, and my girlfriend have been urging me to upgrade to a better monitor. And I refuse to because I am familiar with this monitor. I am familiar with its workflow, the color it provides, everything. This gives me a good way to predict the outcome of the color scheme in my videos and so on. And this works the same way for professional studio monitors in studios. When I was working in studios as well, many of these high-grade studio monitors were colored. That brings us to the BBC monitors behind us. Except there's a catch, which we'll talk about in a minute. But LS3 have a long history of being used by BBC engineers. And the intention of the LS3 was not to produce the most accurate sound, but something that was familiar to every engineer wherever they went. So if they were to go to this BBC studio, they would have the LS3 If they went to another one in a different country or different region, then they would have the same LS3 and they can continue to pick up their work. And so they were naturally designed to work in small confined spaces like BBC broadcasting moving vans and so on. Now the funny thing is, because this speaker was colored in a way, it had this warm characteristic, it had this, I believe, about 120 hertz little bump there. And so it had a very nice warm presentation with very good high frequency response and very good vocal ranges because it was used for BBC monitoring. And so it catered to audiophiles like you and I. And through the generations, it has become a collectible speaker, something to be desired upon. And so many of the different BBC monitors that was licensed to different companies to be made, for example, Rogers, Falcon, Harbeth, and so on, had these badges that were like silver badge, gold badge, the early 15 ohm versions, the later 11 ohm versions, if I remember correctly. There's a long history, but the point being is that it was a speaker that was desired by many audiophiles and music lovers because of its, for the lack of better words, coloration. And it was such a great design that even myself owned the gold badge LS3 with the white belly KEF drivers, and I've owned several pairs. I think I've lost count, but I've owned several pairs, and they've gone to a price point so ridiculous that it became less about the sound value and more about the collectible value. And recently, thankfully, Falcon came out with the reissue, if you so will, of the licensed BBC monitor version. Now, before the fact that these reissue and licensed versions came out, we had a lot of imitation products. We had many imitation products from China that claimed close as possible to the original LS3 Granted, I haven't heard too many of them because I've never bought them, because I already heard from a lot of people that they were just crap. They just sounded really bad, broken, nothing close to the LS3 so I never really bothered to buy them. So I can't speak for the other fake models. And the speakers behind me, the SoundArtist LS3 is a blatant copy of the original LS3 except it's nothing close to the original LS3 in terms of its craftsmanship, and its drivers are just generic drivers, probably some crappy drivers really, especially considering the price point. And if you look at the cabinet design, it's made of MDF instead of plywood. It has a lot of compromises, even the little details like the distance from the baffle and all that kind of stuff accounts that this speaker is nothing but a poorly designed copy attempt of the LS3 So why the hell would you want this? Well, I thought that exact same thing. considering that a lot of the copy version of the LS35A from China is absolutely crap for the most part. Well, after spending a lot of time with the LS35A, especially in near field on my desk, as you've probably seen in several of my reviews, I found that this speaker is quite enjoyable and gets really close to the LS35A. As much as I hate to admit that, it gets pretty close to the sound of the original LS35A. The 11 ohm version, not the 15 ohm version. But while it gets very, very close to the original sound of the 11 ohm version LS35A, it's only $600. So there's a catch. Other than the fact that the fit and finish of the speaker is equivalent to a $600 speaker, meaning that the fit and finish is not equivalent to the original LS35A, nor is it close to the current licensed version BBC monitor speakers by Falcon. Those are very much better finish, better craftsmanship, better attention to detail, to spec by BBC, whereas this is not. But other than that, in terms of its sound quality, there's some little grainy nature to the SoundArtist LS3 in comparison to the 11 ohm version old LS3 and the current relicensed version of the Falcon LS3 And that grainy nature, that kind of muffled sound, is more apparent in stereo listening than it is in near field. In near field, I feel like it kind of works in a little bit of its favor because, first of all, it has a more forgiving nature to the sound than the original LS3 The LS3 the original design, is a little bit more extended in the high frequency, a little bit more refined, a little bit more excitement, if you so will, than this. This is a little bit more recessed, this is a little bit more polite, this is a lot, not a lot, but a little bit more easier to listen to in comparison. And that kind of goes with the grainy nature in the mid-range and the high frequency that the speaker has. That works in favor, at least in my opinion, in near field situations where it's a little bit more forgiving in that kind of situation when the speaker is close to you. And I mean, possibly one of the best speaker for near field use. And for two main reasons. One is that it is a more forgiving nature of the speaker compared to the original LS3 And second is that it's a sealed design just like the original LS3 which is ideal for a desktop situation or close to the wall interaction. However, for stereo listening, there's a lot to be desired. Even with the original LS3 you would have to be someone that doesn't really care about the deep bass extension. While it images fantastically, throws a larger soundstage, and has this warm, luscious characteristic to it that is really desired by a lot of LS3 fans, and also the brilliant high frequency, and it's really good for jazz music, vocals, and I know there's a lot of Chinese fans out there because it's so good with some Chinese music, and a lot of Koreans actually like it as well. But the deep bass is not there with this small speaker. It's limited by its physical size. And I remember that the original LS3 used to have like a matching subwoofer for that exact reason. So if you're using this for a stereo setup, then yes, you need a subwoofer. But in a stereo setting, that muffled nature, that grainy nature that SoundArtists have in comparison to the original LS3 is a little bit more apparent. And it's more easily bothersome. So I would definitely urge you to either look at the original LS3 or the relicensed LS3 design for stereo use if you're looking for that LS3 sound. But still, I urge you to get a subwoofer for either case scenario, the SoundArtist or the new licensed Falcon BBC monitor, or the old one if you want a more full range sound. Now, another thing to note here is that LS3 in general, not just the SoundArtist here, but in general, they're not speakers that you play to ear bleeding levels because it's limited by its physical size of the speaker in a sealed enclosure. And so they're supposed to be, normal to low listening level kind of speaker. And that's why I like them in near field as well. And these speakers are not sensitive speakers, so they do need some power with them. So you either run them with a tube amplifier at low to medium volume levels, or they like big transistor amplifier as well that I found, like Parasound JC5, I remember sounded really good with the LS35As. Hagel was not a really good match for some reason. Again, a tube amplifier like the Wilsonton works well with these speakers if you want a cost-effective tube amplifier that's very good sounding for the money. And so for amplification and in terms of how you listen to things, it's one of the pickier speakers that I found that can give you mixed results if you have the wrong pairing with amplifiers and so on. Now moving on to the placement of the speaker. Well, the LS35As are really not that placement sensitive, at least in my opinion, especially because they're steel designs. They work well in near field, like I mentioned multiple times. I love the SoundArtist for its near field application, and that's what I would recommend it for. But in stereo settings, you can have them tilted extremely in so that you see the outer side of the speakers, or you can have them tilted just moderately. And just to give you a reference, when I say extreme tilt, I literally mean that your right speaker should be hitting your left ear and vice versa, like this. So that's a pretty extreme tilt. And that's exactly what I mean when I say extreme tilt with these LS35As. And this is something that is commonly done with LS35A fanatics. And it works well. It works well for that sweet spot imaging, that vocal right in the middle, pinpoint, just beautiful. And that's one of the favorite setups that I personally like with the LS35As, especially the SoundArtist, because with a SoundArtist, when you have that extreme tilt in a stereo setting, even though it's grainy, it kind of focuses things down so that it seems less grainy and more focused. So that is my favorite setup with the SoundArtist for sure. And let's face it, if you want a more full range sound for $600, there's so many options. There's the triangle, there's the ELAC speakers, there's so many speakers that can give you a more full range, more bass output, more grunt for the money. But you're getting the LS35A not for that. The SoundArtist LS35A is for that LS35A sound, and especially for near field use. So it's an entirely different reason you're getting this. If you listen to jazz, if you listen to vocals, if you like the pinpoint imaging and really good imaging and separation and little details, micro dynamics and stuff, then that's what you get the LS35A for, that LS35A sound. And if you really want the LS35A sound, you get the real LS35A. But if you're limited for budget and you want a taste of the LS35A sound, which gets darn close for the money, then the SoundArtist LS35A is an option. So that's it from me for this video. If you found this video helpful, then please consider subscribing and clicking that like button. Also consider supporting us on Patreon to keep us independent and keep these honest reviews and videos coming. Until next time.